So I'm Darren Smith. We're here with Mark Price. Very welcome to you, Mark.
Hello.
Mark, would you tell us a little bit about you? Because it's better coming from you than me. I know that you used to look after Waitrose. That's one of the impressive things that you did. Would you tell us a little bit about that and what else you've done in your career?
I'll try. I graduated in archaeology and ancient history, what seemed like an age ago. I wanted to be a pro golfer. I was maybe going to be a marine archaeologist, but my dear old dad persuaded me to get a proper job. So I applied and joined the John Lewis Partnership Graduate Training Scheme. And then I worked for 17 years in John Lewis. And then I worked for a further 17 years in Waitrose. And for the last decade, my time there, I was the managing director of Waitrose, deputy chairman of the John Lewis Partnership for the last 3 years. During that time, I was also deputy chairman of Channel 4 TV in a non-executive director capacity. I chaired a couple of charities. And then when I retired from the partnership, I went to be Minister of State for Trade and Investment, which I did for about a year and a half. Saw through the Brexit referendum and the early work after that. And now I write and I speak, and I've built a digital business.
Because you also write children's books as well, don't you?
Now, I write children's books now, so I still write children's books, and there are a number with my literary agent, and one's been published, and I write business books, and I've written food books as well. But my main, I write every morning. So yeah, I'm an active writer, and then in the afternoons I spend my time in the House of Lords, and also I'm building a digital business about workplace happiness.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right, well, a very impressive CV. The reason we particularly wanted to speak with you was about people engagement. I know it's something you're passionate about. You've got a website, engaging.works, which I've actually just signed up to as well. She sent me the link. So we've got a bunch of questions to ask you. Mark and I have talked about these questions, so they are slightly preset, but we're going to go off on tangents where it makes sense, hopefully answering questions that people have pitched to us, and also those that we found through Google search. So the very first one we're going to start with, Mark, is what is people engagement?
Well, I think people engagement is about making sure that those people inside an organisation are really committed to its success. And you do that through a whole host of things. So reward and recognition and sharing of information and empowerment and well-being, having a sense of purpose, and the relationship you have with your line manager and your career development. So there's lots of things that go to enable people to feel engaged and happy in work. But my strong belief, born now by a lot of academic evidence, is that people who are engaged at work and happy at work perform much better. They're more committed. So profits are higher on average 20% with most engaged workforces. Productivity is 20% higher. Wastage is lower. Earnings per share is higher. Staff turnover is lower. Sick absence is lower. So all the indicators show there is a strong correlation between an engaged and a happy workforce and a sustainable and long-term successful organisation. So that's the message that I'm trying to get across to people, that being happy at work is not a hippie thing. It's a really good commercial thing. It's good for individuals, it's good for society, it's good for business too.
Someone said that smiles equal money, and it sounds like you're saying similar sort of thing. People are happy, they're making more money at work.
Yeah, I sometimes have people debate with me the validity of the numbers. Is there really a 20% profit dividend for more engaged workforces over less engaged workforces? To which my response is ultimately, look, let's say it's the same. Let's say there is no difference between the commercial results of a happy workforce and an unhappy workforce. Which would you rather have? You know, for the sake of the individuals, for the sake of their mental well-being, etc., you'd want a happy workforce. So I think it does work on a commercial level. I worked in an organisation, the John Lewis Partnership, for over 3 decades, where the supreme purpose is the happiness of the people that work there. And the founder of the John Lewis Partnership 100 years ago had a very simple thought, and it was this: if your people are happy, they're going to work harder, they're going to be more committed, they're going to give your customers better service, And if your customers get better service, they're going to be happy, they're going to be more loyal, and therefore you will have a profitable and sustainable business. And I think that's right. I've seen it in action for 30 years, and now I want to help other organizations have happier and more engaged workforces.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you, Mark. A lot of our learners are theorists. They love a good model. What's a people engagement model or theory that you have in mind?
Well, the theory, as I've said, is very straightforward, that all the academic evidence currently shows that engaged and happy workforces are more productive, more profitable, etc. If you just think about the cost of recruitment, I'll set this out by way of a short story. I can remember in the early part of the 2000s, Waitrose took on a number of shops from a competitor, and we retained the staff that were there, and they became partners in the John Lewis Partnership and Waitrose. Now, as a consequence of that, sick absence fell from about 8% to 2%. And that saving in sick absence produced £80,000 to the bottom line in that one shop. When we took that shop over, staff turnover was 73%. Within 6 months, the staff turnover came down to around 20%. The recruitment costs of that, so recruiting people, giving them uniforms, training them, getting productivity up, the benefit to that on the bottom line was also about £80,000 or £90,000. So by having a workforce that was happy and engaged and committed to the cause, we actually produced £160,000 to the bottom line just in productivity savings through reducing sick absence and from reducing staff turnover. So I've seen lots of practical things that support nurturing the staff that you have, improving them, making them happier, and as a consequence, the business flourishing.
And I bet you've seen companies over the years that have done it very well and not very well. Obviously, Waitrose seems to have done it very well. Can you try and bring that to life for us in terms of practicality of what did the management, the people do? So others are looking at this and thinking, I could go do some of what Mark's done.
Yes, well, in my book, Fairness for All, and on my website, Engaging Works, I set out the 6 things which are prerequisites to having an engaged and a happy workforce, in my experience. The first one is reward and recognition. You have to pay people fairly. But where people get hung up on pay is that pay in and of itself is not a motivator. Pay can be a demotivator if you don't give people a fair level of pay. What's important about reward is that people feel that their extra discretionary effort is somehow rewarded in terms of pay. Now, the way that the John Lewis Partnership does that is it has a bonus that's shared by everybody every year, but also there are clubs and societies which are highly subsidised. But people feel rewarded for the effort that they put in above and beyond their pay. Pret do it fantastically well. So every week when you go into a Pret, there's somebody checking on customer service. If they hit the standard, all the staff that work in that particular branch of Pret get a bonus. So there are lots of things out there that acknowledge that the people make a difference. They reward that, but they pay fairly in the first instance. More important than pay is recognition. The reality is that telling somebody they've done well, giving them feedback, is more of a motivator. All the research I do on the Engaging Works website through the happiness survey tells me that people prize that level of recognition more than they prize getting their pay right once every year. Okay. Sadly, people are only recognised on average once every 4.5 months. That's what the research says. And therefore, there's huge scope to improve people's engagement and happiness by simply giving them positive reinforcement when they do things well and coaching them to be better when things can be improved. The second element, Darren, is information, openly sharing information with people. The third step, after having information openly shared, so people don't feel in the dark about the business they work for, is empowering people to make a real difference. Because if you empower people, you can then recognise and acknowledge what they've done. So giving the people the freedom, the parameters to go and do something is hugely important in terms of their personal engagement. Asking them to do something, not telling them to do something, allowing them to use their judgment to get the best results.
Yep.
The fourth area is well-being. People care that the company or the individual they work for is interested in their health, is interested in their mental health, is interested in their financial health. So people want to work for organizations that care for them, and that helps their happiness and engagement. The fifth thing is a sense of purpose. People want to do something that has meaning. And you don't have to work for a company that is inventing drugs that are going to save the world. In Waitrose, we had Community Matters. Our partners decided on which of 3 good causes locally we were going to give money to. Our customers then voted on that. We gave hours for our partners to go out and volunteer. So we did lots to give people a sense of purpose that was above and beyond, you know, the very, very honourable thing of selling people food so that they can live their lives. And lastly, there's job satisfaction, and that breaks down into 2 things. First of all, people want to know that they are being developed from a career point of view, that they are being invested in. And lastly, and probably most critically, the number one reason that people leave organisations, in fact, the information says 83% of people leave organisations because of the relationship they don't have with their line manager. So that relationship you have with your line manager is crucial in terms of the happiness engagement you have at work. Line managers who get it right, who recognise, who reward, who share information, who empower their teams, who care about their well-being, who give those people a sense of purpose every day, who try to develop them, they're the managers that have the most engaged and the happiest staff. So getting that right, that relationship right, is crucially important.
Wow. I've just written that down. You can probably see me writing. I was writing down those 6. I thought I want to come back to those and make sure that I understand them and people watching. So the first one you talked about is reward and recognition. You said every 4.5 months. Is that 4.5 months they're just getting a thanks and a well done, or does it need to be more?
No, just a thank you.
And they're not getting anything for 4.5 months on average? Wow.
Nope.
Because it doesn't seem very hard, does it? It's just a thanks and a well done. Okay, fair enough. You talked about number 3, which was empowering. I think Steve Jobs says it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. And you're saying something similar. Makes absolute sense. Okay. Then let's pick up on number 4, well-being. Obviously, mental health. You talked about health of people. And their financial health. Can you just bring that to life for us a bit more, Mark, in terms of mental health, particularly at the moment being so important? What have you seen that's starting to work? Because this is relatively new to all of us.
Well, it's interesting you say it's new. I think that understanding when people are under pressure and understanding how you relieve that pressure is very important. And when people come into work, they carry things from outside work with them. And if you are attuned to your people, and if you care for your people, you're going to notice that. You're going to ask them about how things are at home. You're going to ask them if their workload is manageable. You're going to ask them if they've got the resources to do the job they need to do. And most people feel under pressure because they don't feel that they've either got control of the situation because you haven't allowed them to have control of the situation, or they feel they don't have the wherewithal to be able to manage the challenges that lie ahead with them. So I always felt the really important question to ask your team was, is there anything that I can do to support you deliver what you need to deliver? Do you have the tools and resources to do your job? And then when the answer is no, it's about being supportive to help people do that. So I think there's lots of early indicators that good managers have always done that allow you to understand when people are feeling under pressure, when they might have pressure at home, and being sensitive about that, giving people time off. I was very lucky that in the John Lewis Partnership, they had financial committees that would help people who were under any kind of financial strain. There was also advice that was given from lawyers and others if people got into difficulty in other areas of their life. So the partnership took a holistic approach to say, if you are in difficulty, whether it be financial difficulty, whether it be a legal scrape somewhere, we will do what we can do to try and help you, because we know that that impacts onto your productivity and happiness at work. long before the NHS ever came along. Speed and Lewis organised that there should be physiotherapists and GPs that visited John Lewis branches. And again, it was really smart thinking. One, it showed the employees, the partners, that he cared and the organisation cared, but also it ensured that people were there at work, not at home or doing other things. So I think a really smart employer is concerned about people's mental and physical well-being, because not only is it good for the individual and makes the individual feel that they're cared for, but it's good for the organisation commercially as well.
Wow. These six, Mark, do they have a title that you put them under, the six? Want to give it something, some funky title? Does it have one? The six men and...
Well, I call it 6 Steps to Workplace Happiness.
Right.
So in my book, Fairness for All, I set out the 6 steps, and I produced a pamphlet too called 6 Steps to Workplace Happiness, which is available on Amazon and in all good bookshops. And that it's a really short pamphlet that just sets those 6 things out and why they're important and how you might think about achieving them. But what I would say, Darren, is that you have to decide within those 6 what's right for you. Every organisation will take a different approach to what reward looks like, what recognition looks like. There are things I did when I was at Waitrose. So we gave branch managers or managers thank you cards. So they kept them in their desks, so it was really easy to write a note. We gave managers a checkbook, so if somebody done really well, they could send somebody out for a dinner with their other half. We encourage managers to freely give a bunch of flowers or a bottle of wine to somebody who did something well. So we did things to try and make it easy for managers to recognise good performance, but that will be different in every different organisation. So what I've tried to do with those 6 steps is think about what were the things in principle that John Lewis and Waitrose did. And I talk about a whole host of other organisations in the book. I talk about Unipart and Pret and Virgin. And I talk about how they've taken elements of those 6 things to reinforce those points of their workforce. So what I would say is those 6 things I think are critically important, but every company will exercise them in a different way.
Lovely. Lovely. So it sounds like it's horses for courses. It must fit with your culture. Sounds like some companies do some bits better than the other bits, but that's their choice and that makes sense for them. I guess you mentioned Virgin. Everyone would probably hold up Virgin as the most employee engaged company. What's the thing of the 6 you think they lead with?
Well, I think it's a fundamental belief that if you don't have happy employees, you don't have happy customers. So I've heard Richard Branson, I read Richard Branson on many occasions talk about how do you do that. But I suspect every part of the Virgin Empire deals with it in a slightly different way. My 6 things apply to them all, but I suspect if you talk to anybody from Virgin, they would say, we believe that you should pay people fairly, you should reward them. It's good when you share information, you should empower people. So you quoted Steve Jobs, which is absolutely right. We should look after their well-being. There was a great quote from Theodore Roosevelt who said, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think if there's anything with Richard Branson and Virgin, he demonstrates that he cares. He demonstrates that he cares about his employees. He demonstrates that he cares about his customers. And so at some point, a person within an organisation, or hopefully the whole organisation, demonstrates it cares. I think that that's really important in people feeling happy and comfortable at work.
And just coming back, the last piece on the 6, number 1 was reward and recognition. There was a piece of research by, I think, Hertzberg, but I might be wrong, who said that salary was just a hygiene factor. And once you got past that, then it mattered. You could probably explain that better than I, Mark.
He did say that, and it is in my book, Fairness for All. He made exactly the same point that you just made, Darren, which is that once you have paid somebody fairly, no matter how much you pay above that, it doesn't make them more motivated. And so when I do the free happiness survey for people on engaging words, pay is actually the 9th most important thing. I mean, far more important for people is my career development, feeling as though I'm empowered to do a job, recognition. They all score far more highly than pay.
Yes.
What's interesting, when people do a survey at work where they don't get personal results back, there's a tendency to game the system. And so people say, look, if we all mark pay down lowly in terms of our employee survey, the management will do something about our pay.
Yep.
And I think because of that, you get a slightly skewed result. What I have is a survey that's free for anybody to do anywhere in the world, 5 languages, and more coming on the way. And it's a survey for you to measure your workplace happiness. So in that sense, you're only thinking about how you feel against other people. And when you've done the 5-minute survey, what it does is it shows your results against other people that look like you, people of your gender, your age, who work in your industry, etc. And it tells you on that scale where you are either more or less happy. And it's from that that the results say that pay is important. Of course it's important. I mean, you have to pay people fairly,
yeah.
But it's not the thing that's getting them out of bed every morning. You know, being rewarded for additional discretionary effort, that's more, say, in layman's language, getting a bonus when I do something well, that's more likely to get you out of bed to work. But being thanked every day, being told that you're doing something well, being told that you're adding value, those things are more motivational. Doing something where you've been told that you are making a difference, that there is a sense of purpose to what you're doing, going to work because you feel you're being developed as an individual, going to work because you have a great working relationship with your team and your boss, going to work because you genuinely think they care about you, all of those things are more powerful. That's the simple truth of it. But a lot of companies don't want to do employee engagement surveys because they think they'll just get a beating on pay and they don't want to hear it. The reality is that they're likely to hear other things once you can get past the gaming element.
And I saw you put on LinkedIn the other day, I'm just going to reflect back, I think you said the chemical industry is the happiest. Is that right?
Well, we measure it every week. So every week, thousands of people take the happiness test. And so every week is a bit of fun. We say this week, this industry is the happiness, and every week, this industry is the lowest. But surprisingly, for the last 2 weeks, yeah, the chemical industry has been has scored the happiest. But what I'm able to do is that there are 23 sectors that I measure. And then within those sectors, I break it down into age groups, genders, ethnicity, management level, job type. So I can be quite granular in understanding which industries are the happiest and the least happy, but then within industries, which groups are most happy and least happy. And I've developed this rather fun thing called Apostles and Anarchists. And it's a 4x4 matrix based on a number of the questions in the survey. And what I can do from that is work out how many people in your organization or your industry are apostles and positively promote, how many are anarchists and are positively creating unhelpful noise. Right. And then I've got 2 other categories within that, which I quite enjoy. One are called martyrs. These are people who are not happy at work, but would recommend it to other people to go and work in. They tend to be in the public services. They tend to work for the NHS. And then there's another group of individualists who are happy at work, but wouldn't recommend it to anybody. These tend to be lawyers and people in finance who think that they work incredibly hard, but it's fulfilling work and they're very well paid, but they wouldn't want anybody else to go into it. So what I'm able to do is to look at industry and look at companies, but also look at individual groupings to see who's happy and who's not. And also, by the same measure, I look at stickiness. So I look at which group of people are most likely to stay in a job and which will be actively looking to leave a particular job or employer. And again, that's quite interesting when you look at that by group and by industry to see where you get the biggest groups who are wanting to move out of their industry and go elsewhere. And it's surprising. Some of the industries you would think were really appealing, like the tech industry, actually is one of the lowest scoring. Go to the 23 sectors, it's about 17th. So there's a lot of discontent in tech, which surprised me. Others, hospitality is always amongst the highest scoring, which again surprises you because you might think that in service industries people would be less happy, but because of the way that sector works, it's very happy. Retail, on the other hand, is a very unhappy sector at the moment on the basis of all the results that I see.
Wow. Yeah, I bet you see a lot of insights there. Okay, okay, fabulous. I was going to ask you about House of Lords. Have you ever done a survey with them on
No,
happiness?
no, I haven't actually. No, I haven't. I suspect there are a number of people in the House of Lords who have taken the survey, open to anybody, but no, I haven't specifically asked the Lords to take the happiness survey.
That's all right. Just tongue in cheek. Let's get back to a serious question of, let's say I'm a HR manager, or let's say I'm a CEO of a company. We do these employee engagement surveys, and if we're honest with ourselves, we do some of the small quick wins, but the rest of the stuff is a bit pink and fuzzy. What do they do? What are the initial steps they should take to start increasing their happiness of the workforce?
So the first thing I'd say is that I was involved in setting up the happiness survey, or not the happiness survey, the employee survey, I should say, in Waitrose and John Lewis nearly 20 years ago. And it was taken every year in April time, and we would measure our performance between the various questions and against the previous year. So it was a very internally focused measure, and that's what most companies do. What I wanted to do with Engaging Works and the happiness survey there was to give the information that I really wanted, particularly when I was running Waitrose. And so what I wanted to do is to make sure that I had information against the sector. It's all well and good knowing if you've improved or gone down on a measure against last year. But what I wanted to know is, has the sector gone up and gone down? So the first thing you need to know really to ground your results is, what's the comparative measure? How am I doing against my industry and companies that look like me? How am I doing against the global set of results? The second thing that I felt was very important is the individuals got feedback. So when I was doing the survey inside the partnership, the survey was taken in April. First results could go out in June time. Then they were discussed in the organisation in August. But individuals did not get personal feedback. So what I've designed is a system, even when taken by a company, that an individual gets their own feedback on their happiness rating against people that look like them in their industry. The reason I do that is that I think part of the solution, as you were alluding to, is it's for the individual to think about their happiness. And when they get a survey, they may well say, look, in these 3 or 4 areas, you're underscoring against the industry or globally. Here's some things you might want to do. Here are some conversations you might want to have with your line manager. Because quite often what happens with these employee surveys is the results that the employees do the survey, and then they wait for management to do something. You know, this is how I feel, you do something about it. And it's not about ping pong tables, it's not about beanbags, it's about those 6 fundamentals I talked about. But in each of them, there is a degree of responsibility for the individual to say, I need to have a conversation about my reward or about recognition. If I want more information, how do I go about finding that information? I want to be more empowered. How do I have a conversation with my manager to be more empowered, etc., etc. So what I try to do is to pinpoint for individuals how they might engage with the organisation. But then obviously the managers get the information back. It's all anonymised, and it tells them these are the areas, but also these are the groups of people that have got issues in these particular areas. There's that saying, isn't there, that if you've got your head in the oven and your feet in the fridge, you're an average temperature. And you can't look at it like that. You have to think about millennials in management, not in management, females, etc. And it's only by looking at it in that granular way that you can start to say, okay, we need to think about this group in a certain way rather than one size fits all. What I see most companies do is it's all about a ping pong table, or it's all about, I'm being disparaging, but that's the great temptation. You get into that kind of territory. And then I think it's important to do these things regularly. So what I built in Engaging Works is something that's ridiculously inexpensive, so that companies can repeat the exercise regularly, but that individuals feel that they're growing on the back of it. They can also be matched with a mentor so that they get personal feedback and they can grow. So the way I see these things is far more holistic. It's not just a thing for the management of a company. It's something for everybody that works in the company to think about their levels of engagement and happiness, and it tries to help people improve.
I must say, I was in that place of it's the management, but you've just put individual and management together and said there's a joint responsibility. And I'm thinking, well, of course there is. That makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Okay. Okay. Thinking about a company that's they've done their engagement survey, they've heard about the six steps. What are the likely pitfalls they might get into over the coming years of trying to make some traction and trying to improve the happiness of their employees?
Well, I would say two things. The first is that people talk about changing culture, but culture is the sediment of past transactions. You can't change culture overnight. Cynical employees will simply say it's a new management team and they say they want to change things, but then the last lot wanted to change things and not much has changed. And therefore you have to be prepared for the long haul, and it's your actions that really count, not what you say. And aligned to that is this thought that you can't do all of those things in one go. You need to think about, of those 6 steps, which are the areas where most people have got the greatest degree of sense for improvement, and then how do we go about doing that? So there's one large institution I'm working with at the moment, and what they've said is, well, we think this is a 5-year plan. You know, what we want to do is we want to map out how we improve these things over 5 years. And when we take each of these areas, to really think about how we do it effectively within our particular organisation so it sticks. And I think you've got to have that kind of long-term commitment. I think just doing the survey in the first instance is a pretty good sign to employees that you're interested and you care, you want to know how they think and feel, and you want to help them understand their workplace happiness and how they should improve it. So I think that's a really good starting point. But after that, it's a question of saying, you know, this is something that's now going to take us a number of years, and we as a management team are serious. I think that from that flow, as I said earlier, improved commercial results. So my hope would be that the management would start saying, instead of every month having at the top of our score sheet our profit and loss account or our balance sheet, the thing that we're going to look at is our employees' happiness. So let's look at the quantitative measures. Let's look at staff turnover. Let's look at sick absence. Let's look at the engaging work survey results. Let's see how people feel this month. Let's see if we're managing to keep people in work, train them, develop them. And then I believe from that flows the commercial results. That's not to say you don't have a commercial strategy. You have to, you know, what do we sell? What price do we sell it for? Who are our competitors? All of those things have to be done and have to be done really well. But my point of view would be that they are delivered to a much higher standard if you have an engaged workforce who are working with you to ensure that the organisation succeeds.
I'm just conscious of your time, Mark, so I'm just going to ask you one more question, if that's okay. So I'm a CEO or an MD of a large production site, which is typically our prospects and clients, and they're thinking 20%. I'm hearing a guy who's very credible telling me I can add 20% to my bottom line with engaged employees. If they wanted to do something small to prove it to themselves, what would they do?
Well, they shouldn't just take it from me. You can read business papers from Harvard, from Columbia. There are lots of academic institutions there that are producing results that have measured companies with engaged and unengaged. I would say the very first thing to do is just take a survey. The workplace happiness survey on engaging works is free. Anybody can go there today, take the test. It takes 5 minutes, and they get instant results. If a company wanted to do it, it would cost them a few £1,000s. It costs virtually nothing to do. And that gives you a base measure. That says our business against others is either doing well or is doing less well or has scope for improvement in these areas. So as you know, when you're in management, the first thing to do is to get data and understand where the issues are and then say about improving them. So my first step would be to say, okay, it sounds as though there is a correlation. It sounds as though there's strong academic evidence. I can see the point. I understand it. Then you measure it. And then based on that, you say, how can I improve it? But going back to my earlier example, Darren, even if you understand the cost of recruitment,
Yep.
You know, McDonald's reckon it costs £750 to recruit a new person to McDonald's. If you're in a law firm or accountancy, it's many, many thousands to recruit somebody. So just understanding what's your attrition rate in terms of your staff turnover, and thinking about, if we brought that down, what would it mean, both in terms of our productivity and our cost? What's our sick absence? If we brought it down, what would it mean? There are some very tangible measures around workforce productivity on those two things. You could just start at one to say, you know, if we had a program to reduce staff turnover, what might it look like? I think then, as I said, measuring for workplace happiness gives you more data, more granular data on, you know, which groups are happy, which groups are unhappy, why are they happy, why are they unhappy, as well as giving them format. So that's the very, very first thing I'd do. Then I'd sit back and say, we've either got scope to improve, or, you know what, we're brilliant. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. If you don't have the data, how do you know?
How do you know? So it'll be survey, and it'll be probably focusing on one measure. Is the two particular pieces I took from that they might start with?
Yeah, I think so. I would probably take a far closer look at my staff turnover and sickness numbers, and try and understand why people are going. And then I would do a very simple, straightforward survey, like at engaging.works. And from that, I would decide whether I have got a problem and whether I can improve, and then think about what strategy is going to be right for you to do that.
Brilliant, brilliant. Mark, thank you very much. We've kept you longer than I said, but you've been brilliant. We've understood more about people engagement I think I ever understood before. We'll put links to,
I doubt it.
We'll put links to Engaging Works in the transcription and in the video. We'll pop that bit up. A big thank you to you. You're clearly an expert in the topic. We'll let you get back to the House of Lords.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to talk, Darren, and well done to you. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Mark.